to call him right now.
All right, we're streaming and recording.
Okay, and
Everything.
this is the Animateducated channel, and this is the Ambassador Good Time Ear Tango Radio Hour. And today we've got an animator director, a Peabody Award-winning animator director.
You said that very well.
Did I? Oh, see, you told me.
Okay.
I was like, yeah, I better push that. All right. So, yeah. So you told me that that last time I talked to you. So, I've been trying to get you on the phone, just talk to you and get you on this radio thing for about a year now. And I'm not complaining.
I apologize.
No,
I apologize.
No problem. No. Thanks a lot, Bob. Jeez.
Yeah.
I felt at times like I was like a stalker, and I was like, oh, I don't want to give him that impression, So, but anyway, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us and everything. So anyway, I teach at Woodbury University, and I actually showed your film that you worked on. It was a commercial that I remember seeing as a kid in the 70s when we had the energy crisis, and it was a Chevron commercial, and you animated a bunch of dinosaurs that turn into a glop of oil, and it explains the whole process of where gas comes from.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you should
know.
Of course. So I want to that's how I first kind of heard about you and saw your work. And I just want to go back and just introduce you again, and just find out how did you first get involved with animation?
Well, it's directly out of art school. I loved animation. I went to Chenard Art Institute,
mm-hmm.
and my teacher, who later became my mentor and my writing partner, Thornton He,
mm-hmm.
had invited me, or asked me, however you want to put it, if I would come to work with him on a special project at Disney Studios.
Oh.
So I went to work. My first, I came out of school and went to work 2 weeks later at Disney, and was there for a little over a year. And then the film was shelved. But during the time I was there, everybody was talking about the film. It was white on white paper sculpture, and it was stories of Hans Christian Andersen.
Wow.
And I had never done paper sculpture before or since, but I did for this film. And I was on the third floor with Walt, and he used to bring dignitaries in to show off the work and stuff. So I had a really great beginning before I went out into the industry. But basically, it feels like I loved animation. I loved cartoons growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I like making people laugh. That's one of the things I enjoy. And so I went. What can I say? I went to art school, and from there to Disney.
Oh wow! Okay, so how long?
Great. By the way, a great art school.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, most of the, everybody I know. I mean, we have animation, colleges now, or schools with animation, courses and all that. But yeah, that was like the top animation art school, and everybody kind of came out of that or had been to that and went to Disney from there. So that's great.
Yeah, well, I had Mark Davis. I had Don Graham, the great drawing teacher. I came obviously very close with Mark, great teacher. I mean, the teachers were great, and the students were very competitive. So it was a great place to be.
Right. And so, so you worked at Disney on any features or after that?
I was on I worked off and on for Disney, but both when I had my company and we did films for Disney, educational films, and I wrote Harold and His Amazing Plants, which explains photosynthesis, but it's actually a comedy. Things for Epcot. Off and on, I've done things for Disney, but I was only there for a little over a year, and then the rest, then I went out into the world, the art world,
Mhm.
or
Now,
the animation world.
yeah. Now, when you went out, did you get into advertising?
Uh, well, I mean, we did commercials. I
Right.
mean, I never worked at an advertising agency, if you meant that.
Oh no, but I mean,
No.
didn't you form your own studio, Kurtz and
Oh yeah,
Friends?
I did, but
Yeah.
that was after 10 years,
Oh, okay.
more than 10 years. It was like about 12, 13 years in the industry. Before that, I mean, I went out and I worked for a place called Format Films,
Oh.
and we started doing commercials. And then for that studio, I designed Alvin the Chipmunk, the first Alvin the Chipmunks, and David Seville, and I was a writer on the show. And then I
Oh.
was a writer on the show, and Linus the Lionhearted. And through that time, through the '60s, I wrote. And another writer. We wrote the first year of the Pink Panther shorts, and I worked for Roger Ramjet, and I was going to leave the business, and I worked all around. And I was a freelancer as both a writer and a designer, and then eventually a director.
Ah. Oh, okay. And then, so yeah, because I remember as a kid, again, my mom used to work in something called a newspaper. She was was a commercial artist for this newspaper in Daytona Beach, and her boss had all these, these art direction magazines and things, and you were in one of them. Um, uh, and I remember seeing you had this mask that you put over your face, and it was a big smiley,
Yeah.
mask. And I remember seeing that, going, "What is that?" And then it had some like kind of clips of of your stills from some of your films that you worked on, and that's another way. I was like, "Oh, Bob Kurtz, oh Kurtz and Friends," because it was you had had an ad in there and all that. Um,
Well,
so.
well, the idea of the mask, I when I started the company, Kurtz and Friends in the early '70s, we get a lot of requests for what did I look like, which I thought wasn't important. Uh, so I felt that all artists hide behind masks. So
Right.
for about 3 or 4 years, I only gave them photographs for press of wearing a mask.
Ah,
Uh, and then eventually, I got tired of that idea.
yeah.
So eventually, I came out from under it. But the reason was I didn't think it was important.
Yeah,
What I look like. It's
right.
what my work is and how it touches you. But that's how. So there, every once in a while, people say, "Oh, that's what you look like."
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's kind of like you're an actor. You're behind the, different
yeah,
roles and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. That's good. Um, so after you've been working on Kurtz and Friends, you did lots of commercials. What were some of the highlights that you remember during that time period? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of highlights.
Oh, I'm
I mean,
sure.
there's so many projects and things that we did. Um, it was I had worked at some other studios, and we were having success. But when we started the company, um, it took off, and we had been winning a lot of awards and things that are kind of dear to me, Kitty Salmon, uh, which I created, in which the reason Kitty Salmon is fun is because, well, when the client came to
Uh-huh.
us, and it was very interesting because they had a young writer who was a cab driver who his first job and who wrote the spots, but they had no idea for the visuals, and his name was John Swartzwelder, who was later became one of the major influences in The Simpsons.
Oh.
Um, Itchy and Scratchy is definitely
Oh.
him.
Oh, okay.
So he wrote, and I loved being a cat by trade. You
Uh,
would do anything to get your paws on some salmon. Now really funny, unique writing. The structure, everything about it.
Right.
And so it was fun to do. And when I and my co-designer, Robert Palouse, we always, at all my designers at the studio, we had competition for every job. And we would design, and whoever won the design that the client liked, then they designed the film. I always directed everything. So, I always went out anyway. But I felt as a designer, a character designer, and a production designer, that I just didn't want to choose and pick the good ones. I felt it was good to have a competitive atmosphere. So when Kitty Salmon came up, we each, because I tend to draw a lot, and so did Robert. So he did 25 cats, and I did 25 cats. So we gave him 50 cats.
Wow.
And the art director, a man by the name of Jim Kochever, really wonderful guy, said, not dumb enough. So I went back and I wanted him to be a real naive cat. And in a sense, it was me. He really had no direction in life. Well, not quite, but he had no direction in life, cat.
Right.
But if you told him something, nothing would ever stop him from getting it, which was, of course, Kitty Salmon. So we designed another 25, and they loved my drawing. And the drawing that they loved was the drawing I did that was closely, it doesn't look like me, but it was me. So I used it often now. I use it when they ask for my pictures of the mask, get a drawing of Kitty Salmon. And it was fascinating. Some people didn't think it was a real commercial because it was so funny. So I was asked by a theater in Boston if they could run the spots as shorts, which they did. And one time when I was in Scotland, people came up to me and they had heard of me by these commercials running as shorts, which I thought was really, really funny. And the other thing about, I didn't realize it, but it was a fishing company decided to go in the seafood business. Now, pardon me, not in the seafood, but the cat food business. And their combination, it was too rich. They did not have a advertising budget, so they would come into different markets, show the commercials that I had done, and they would sell out of this Kitty Salmon. Now, the thing I didn't know about Kitty Salmon was that it was too rich, and cats choked on it. And if they didn't choke, they died.
Oh no!
It was like, it was, and it turned out the owner of the company, who supposedly loved what I did, was also, I guess, a thief and ran off with all the money, I was told, by the agency. So that was the end of Kitty Salmon.
So the tagline was like Kitty Salmon for really dumb cats.
Yeah, those are that, and other things like, if you're talking about the Chevron, how that came about. I was doing, at the time, the hottest thing to work on was Levi commercials, which I was working on.
Right.
And I was in San Francisco in a meeting picking up work, and I got a call because the agency had called the studio in L.A. That's what, the studio was in L.A. Right. And they passed it over, and they said, could you please stop by our agency? We want to ask you something about a Chevron spot. So after I was finished with Levi, I went over to the agency, and they played me a radio spot. And the radio spot was a 60-second spot, and it's the thing. It was so wonderful what they had done, and the creative director was The Voice. Dan Dippery did The Voice, which is almost a Stan Freberg kind of voice.
Yeah.
And they asked me if they thought it would make a good commercial. I said, yeah. And so they asked us if we would storyboard the radio spot.
Wow.
And my designer, had wanted to do, and we've been pushing for a couple of years. I've always been pushing for metamorphic animation, which
Right.
was popular by Lindsay McKay, in 1906.
Right.
So, and then it was kind of got lost. Occasionally it was used, and I wanted to work, and we were always making presentations with metamorphic animation, one thing turning into another.
Right.
But I had a twist on it, adding the effect of the snorkel camera, which is the Kenworthy live action camera, which was this little teeny rod. And so if people were playing cards, you could move in the cards, and you could move up and down.
Right.
So I also wanted to change the viewpoint. We would just animate our viewpoint. It wouldn't be flat. We go up, we go over. It's what
Right.
is done all the time now, but it wasn't done at that time because it's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you have to have great animators.
Oh,
to be able
yeah.
to do it, and then add it with metamorphic. So Robert and I decided, because we had wanted to do it, we had not succeeded in doing metamorphic. We decided we would make a really, really slick storyboard. So we did the storyboard. They're like 3x5, but we painted them on felt. And it's actually what eventually it's frame by frame pretty much. I mean, as the storyboard goes, it is the film that was the one that won all the awards and got all the attention, and then of course open to the campaign.
Right.
We then finished the storyboard, and we didn't hear from the agency.
Oh no.
And about 3 or 4 months go by, and suddenly, and what it turned out, the head of the Chevron advertising said, "Where's that thing that you said you were going to show us?" Because the agency got scared of what we had done. They didn't want to present it. They were very scared. So they presented it, and the client loved it. So they called us up and said, "We want to go, but you have to finish the job in 2 weeks."
Oh my gosh.
Now, for those your listeners, a commercial, a 60-second commercial, takes, depending on the complexity, 8, 10 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yeah.
They gave us 2.
2 weeks?
So,
oh my God.
2 weeks. I mean, we didn't let out the news for years that we did it in 2 weeks because we're afraid other clients would say that.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want your competition. I mean, oh well, you did it for 2 weeks, and here's another 2 weeks.
No. So what happened? What happened was, because here we had the job we wanted to do, but we were given. People always say they're given no time. We were given less than no time.
Yeah.
So what I did is we worked really hard. Robert Palouse designed the spot. I was handing out to animators like the old style where I think it was 5 animators. No animator knew how he was hooking up. I'm the only one that knew how it hooked up. My head of ink and paint said, "Don't get hit by a car," because you're the only one who knows how the film goes together. Because the film was seamless the way I envisioned it. In other words, there are no cuts.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's one continuous shot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we move, and there are no cuts throughout the film. So we made the film, but even now, this gets crazy. The first week, they told us to stop the film, and not only do we not have a decent deadline, but they said they put the film on hold.
Oh gosh!
And they said to me at one point, we have a metamorphic dinosaurs coming out of the earth,
right? And
as it's rotating around, things are happening, and they said oil doesn't come just from dinosaurs or dinosaur bones and stuff. It comes from flora also.
Oh. And
that someone at Chevron, some technician, geologist, whatever,
right,
had said there's a false statement here. And I said, no problem. I said, we'll have a plant come up, click a dinosaur in the nose. And they said, okay. And so we were back on again, and we made the film, and from that we ended up doing 5 years, I think, 50 films for Chevron.
Wow.
I'm sorry for your audience because it goes like a long story, but I remember showing the film, and also we had a thing called the Kurtz line. I want to say, which is I don't ink well. So what I mean by ink on the cell, and like a crook will, so it goes, the line changes all over.
Right.
And I found on television that the line has a life that's really, really interesting. So my inkers, a lot of them were former Disney inkers who do these beautiful thick and thin lines, learned how to do a squiggly bleeding line. Often in a lot of my work, it's a sort of a semi-controlled line that goes all over. In these screenings we had at UCLA and at SC, on the big screen, I was scared because I thought when you go really big screen and you go 200, 300 times the size of what we drew on, what would it look like? It was beautiful.
Wow.
It held together. It was like the bigger the projection, the better the film looked, which we loved. So at the end of an SC presentation where they wanted me to talk, a geologist came up to me and said, "Do you know that your film is geologically correct?"
Oh,
and I
nice.
said, "Yes."
Wow.
Including the flower that punches the dinosaur.
Yeah.
In the nose. Right. Okay, that's Chevron.
Okay. Yeah, I have on Animateducated on at animateducated.blogspot.com. I have a article about you, and it actually has that Chevron commercial in there, and you can see how it goes. I took it from your website, so but it's just amazing how it just started off, with one thing, and it mutates into dinosaurs, and then it rotates around, and you're just it's a constant flowing animation that's just. And I showed it to my students, and they were just like, "Wow! So what kind of program did he use?"
Yeah.
like hands and crayons and all sorts of things. No computers here. So
yeah.
but
Well, we had that. It went afterwards. We were asked in the film and the original, some of the cells and our original storyboard, and that was at the Children's Museum. And I'm trying to think, Exhibition Park. It was there for about 10 years as an example of animation, and they would then have kids draw dinosaurs and do stuff. So they made a very nice setup. It was a big room, and they had it running, and then of course
nice.
obviously exhibits go. But it's funny you say that, because I got a call, I think it was a year or two later, and of course then we were doing a campaign of a lot of metamorphic, and the University of Utah called, and they had their teachers and their staff, and they asked me what kind of paper did I use. So I told them the kind of paper that I used, which we were having specially made, and how they could have it. And the reason is it has a texture, so things it was a little bit thicker. It had a texture so the pencil could do more things, and it had no watermarks. I hated watermarks, so when we shot it, we never had to have people know it's like an imprint on most paper. They don't do it now, but they used to do it where they watermark the paper, and so it gets in the way of when you're doing pencil tests. So I told them, they wanted to know what kind of pencil, and we want like that. Then they wanted to know what kind of camera. What special camera did I have that made those moves? And I said to him, "There's no special camera. That's just the way we envision it." And the room got quiet. And it was pretty funny, because they thought, "Okay, we're gonna get to do metamorphic animation once we get this wonderful camera."
Oh.
No, it doesn't happen that way. It goes back to the strength of a pencil
Mm-hmm.
and ink.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember that, and I remember like later on, R.O. Bleckman with his
Yeah.
style, where it was very, the line was just always moving around, squiggly line kind of animation character, um, and yeah, I love that
Well,
kind
his
of stuff.
line, I was going to say, his line is, I mean, which is a very thin line. He's very particular about it. We became friends since we both had studios, and we would sometimes compete against each other. So when I was in New York, we used to have dinner all the time, and we talked. But part of what he did is when he did a drawing, he often would lay little pieces of paper over the ink line and draw another little squiggle because it looks like a first time squiggle of his artwork, very delicate, but they aren't. He works it over and over again. He's very specific. He it's basically anal over his line.
Wow.
I never thought of that. That's a great book title. Anal over his line.
Anal over his line. You've written the book, Anal over his line, and could you tell me about that? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I worked in Chicago and at a studio that was like kind of took that style, and it was back in the '80s when everybody wanted that style, and they couldn't pay him, so they'd find a smaller studio.
I know that. I know. I was
Yeah.
asked. We as a company were asked that all the time, and we told them if you want that style, go to Bleckman. We
Yeah.
never did him.
Yeah.
An awful lot of our competitors did do him because it looked easy. You could always tell the difference.
Right.
It looked easy, but I did it because he's a friend, and also I felt at that time. I mean, we were doing a lot of work, and we wanted people to come for what we could do. We rarely did other people's work. I brought in a lot of new illustrators to film, but people didn't think of us like Tony the Tiger. We did not do stuff coming out Leo Burnett Agency in Chicago,
Right.
Fruit Loops, Tony the Tiger, all that. Doing other people's work or design, almost if you do go to our site, everything's original. We pretty much created, it's our work. It's not our part of that work. The one time we did do a Raid commercial because they wanted to change but they told us they wanted to change the look. So we did a metamorphic. Here we go. Metamorphic. Weird bugs turning into weird bugs turning into weird bugs. But I'm proud to say we don't. I'm not interested in doing somebody else's style.
Right. It's
then when I
your
say
own
that,
style.
maybe someday there'll be something like if I could do Calvin and Hobbes as an animated film, I would love it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things you go, oh, that would be an honor.
Oh yeah.
To do.
Right.
But it wouldn't be an honor for me to do another Peanuts or something. That's not an honor.
Right. So also on my blog, I also have some clips. You did Mr. DNA from the Jurassic Park.
Right.
You worked on it, and that must have been fun because it's an educational, kind of spin-off kind of.
It was fun. Steven Spielberg came to us, and I met with him, and he told me what he wanted to do, and it was important to him that the logic of the film Jurassic Park is that you had to believe that DNA could be taken from mosquitoes, that were stored in rock from a long, long time ago. And he wanted, there was at one point that I'm trying to remember the name, but it was during the 60s or something like the Sun series, or there was something, but it was like an educational, he wanted it kind of corny. not the imagery, but he handed the kind of a very corny dialogue that felt safe, not an English dialogue, but almost Midwestern. So when Robert and I did the storyboards, and we had a lot of sequences in it, we had again great animators. Pam Cook, Gary Marshall, I would say Gary Marshall, Gary Mooney, just, these on staff, we have just wonderful, wonderful animators. So I went to have a meeting with Spielberg and his producing partner, and they wanted to come over at lunch, and I brought the pencil test, and I brought my editor, and I brought my head of ink and paint. And because I wanted to make notes, because I figured he would be roaring as to, because we gave him a lot of film. And I thought because I'd heard he's very picky on with his suppliers, or whatever you want to call it, people on the outside who work for him. So we came in, I showed the film to him. And while he was eating lunch, he jumped up, which is great, and he yelled, "I got a cartoon in my movie!" And he was so happy, and that was it.
Wow!
So we walked away. So he never made a change, and I'm really happy to say I've worked for him 3 times now, and he's never changed anything that I've done.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is rare.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
rare. My wife said to me when I came back that I was so happy, and she says, does that happen often? And I said, oh yeah. And then I thought, and I only have 2 people who have never changed. Well, I have only 2 clients, because if they change 10% of your work, I think it's not changed.
Right.
I fight for it. But it was Spielberg and George Carlin. I've never. They're the only ones who've never changed anything I've done.
So speaking of George Carlin, that's the other one I have on this thing about the drawing on your mind. I guess that's what it was called. And
that's right.
With the it's no bullshit.
Yeah, right.
So how was that to work on that? Sounded pretty good.
Well, it's always great to work with a professional. And of course, now, I've worked with Lily Tomlin, and of course, George Carlin, and, they are national treasures. So when you're working with them, or Billy Crystal, whatever, and you make them laugh, you feel, it's one thing to make a client laugh, an advertising guy or someone who's a manufacturer, but you make George Carlin laugh. That's really, really cool. So it was interesting that we got a call on the phone and said, George Carlin would like to come over and talk to you about a project. So we go and I meet with George, his wife Brenda, and his producer. And we're talking a little bit, he wants to do some film and animation. And then he did a comedy bit for me. And when he finished doing the comedy bit, I took it and I played it back to him as how it would be done in animation. And he laughed, and then he left, and like 3 minutes go by, I get a phone call. Now, this is before the cell phone.
Right.
And, this is in the 80s. So I get a phone call. So he's George, and he says, it's a deal. Let's go, let's do it. And I said, where are you? And he says, he's across the street from the studio in a phone booth. So he just walked out. They looked at each other and he went, yes. Later, I asked him, this gets really funny. I said, how did you find me? And he said, they looked me up in the Yellow Pages. If anybody can remember Yellow, it was the phone book.
The big, oh my
I
gosh.
think he's the only one who ever looked me up in the phone book. He was a pleasure to work with. So what he did, he writes his own material. Right. And so what he would do is he would go and record on a small recorder material. I would select what we thought we could visualize, because in other words, if his material is funny, which of course it was, to just illustrate it isn't enough, because you can sit and listen to a record of his, and unless you add something, which I call synergy, so each time we would do one more thing that made it funny. We would add on, so there was some business. We never illustrated his humor. And then what happened is that he completely believed in us, so he would just supply us this material. We would pick. Then after we picked what it was, like It's No Bullshit, we'd go in a recording session, and I would direct him as to it, because we would have it in time. We would have done the rough against his. We would did a storyboard against his rough take. Then we would get, when he'd go back and record, that's when we would go into the layout and do the rest. And he was such a good client. And we went off and on, because at one point it was going to be part of a feature. It went back and forth and back and forth, and then eventually was part of an HBO special.
Right.
And he was such a good client, and he had 2 heart attacks while we were working with him.
Oh, wow.
And I had felt he was very special. And by the way, if anybody's ever worked with comedians, it's not always easy, because they're on. Most of them are on. 2 that weren't. I worked with Woody Allen, and Woody Allen's exactly like Woody Allen.
Okay.
And George doesn't have to perform. He doesn't have to prove himself. He doesn't have to make you laugh.
Right.
He's real. He's authentic. And we love working with him so much. I decided, without telling him, I would give him a gift of an extra sequence. And I took the blind golf tournament. A bunch of golfers taking 300 on the third hole. And so I just did that. And so when we were finishing up, I went over to his office, and I said, I have something special for you. And we sat down in front of the TV on the floor, cross-legged, like 2 kids, and watched it. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And it was very special to have known him, and of course, obviously worked for him.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Yeah, I always liked George Carlin. It's wow. That would be fun to meet him and everything. And then another thing on my on the page here, it was about when I was working in I went to school in Chicago, and I was working there, and the Lincoln Park Zoo commercial that you worked on, that came out, Lincoln Park Zoo, it's brand new, so I had that on there too.
That's a good story too. Well, we did a lot of work for all over the United States, and obviously in Europe and that. But Lincoln Park Zoo was interesting. It's one of the oldest zoos in America, I believe, and it was the smaller zoo in Chicago.
Yeah.
And they came with us. They had a track, a musical track that they had asked, and they had found this group called Big Daddy. And Big Daddy had a bit. It's a very funny bit that they did. They actually, so they got lost in the Vietnam War, and they were gone for 20 years. And when they come back, they play all the songs in the wrong tempo. So if it's a really upbeat, they play it slow, like a romance. Like a Beat It would be, really slow and sweet, and they were very funny. So they were out here on the West Coast, and the agency said, "Can you work with them?" I said, "Yes, love to." So we went into the recording session. I went in with them to clean, because they said, "We got to clean this up. It's not, it's not on the beat. It's this, it's that." So I worked with him, and then finally they were satisfied. And I thought about it. I looked at it. It didn't have the energy of their first one. I guess their rough one. the rough one was the one that really felt good. The other
Uh-huh.
one was like, I was too cleaned up. So without telling them, I used the original. And then I designed it. I designed the animals, which was fun to do.
Uh-huh.
And we ended up doing banners on, what's the main street in Chicago? I'm blanking out.
Oh,
But we had these huge banners on Michigan Avenue.
Michigan Avenue, yeah.
Yeah, there were big banners of my designs, and of course they used things on mugs and dancing hippos and or dancing singing hippos and that. And we still get fan mail from people who grew up with the with the song in their head.
Yeah, it's real
Big
catchy.
Daddy, it was a great song. It was
Actually,
great.
I've got it right here. If you'd like to hear it, it's only
Sure
30 seconds, and this is like a
Sure.
radio show here. Let's see if we can.
But it's their scratch track.
Here it is.
In the hit.
There, can you hear that?
Yeah, it's brand new.
I can.
Oh, okay.
We're missing you at the Lincoln Park Zoo.
It's playing right
It's
now.
a world of fun.
Good.
And it's brand new. Come see us. We'll see you at the zoo. Lincoln Park Zoo. What's brand new? Lincoln Park Zoo. My kind of zoo.
Yeah. So that was it. It just played. Yeah. So that was. Oh, are you there? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh no, he left. No. Okay. Yeah, that was. I just played it, the Lincoln Park Zoo theme song there, and yeah, it's our viewers heard it, and you've heard it a lot, so you probably know how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun when things have longevity to it.
Right.
I mean, I did the anti-smoking for the state of California,
Right.
and it's a big, it's a guy trying to stop smoking, and of course we did one on big tobacco attacking, and those commercials. We started somewhere in the 90s. Can't remember exactly what, and we stopped making them about 5 years ago. And this morning on ABC, they just were playing. They were playing it while I was having breakfast. So it's going on for work that we do goes on for like 25 years. Which is that. I mean, and it still holds up, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
We did it with Louis the Lightning Bug, which is for Alabama Power, and they show that all over the place. So it's nice when there's still echoes, people still responding to work that you've done more than a decade ago.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I actually, when I was in Chicago, I worked at Leo Burnett and for like a summer.
And I not one of my, okay, good luck for you.
Well, I wasn't there that long, but it was funny because I came from the animation background, and the people there all were like, went to advertising school. And so I was there, and I had come as like an art director trainee guy, and all these people. I had a copywriter, and he was telling me all this. Oh, that's Ken Burgeon. Who's that? He invented, food folks are fun. Food folks and fun for McDonald's. And I was like, oh, I heard of that. And he's like, yeah, he invented it. And I was like, oh, okay. And ooh, he put the right words together there. And but yeah, that was real interesting because when I was working,
let me tell you,
yeah,
can I
go
tell
ahead.
you a Leo,
Sure. Yeah.
Leo Burnett. Now we know Leo Burnett is an advertising agency, and it's kind of interesting when you go there because they have apples. Because
apples, it's all about
Leo
apples.
Burnett liked to hand out apples and stuff. But I started Kurtz and Friends, and then the people I started with, we had a falling out, and started Kurtz and Friends all over again. And I had a company, but I had no work, so we went off to Chicago. I went with I had moved in my studio, and there was a live action studio there called Sunset Pictures. And together we went to pick up work, and I picked up work from Leo Burnett. And it was I forget his plumber something. It's supposed to clean your plumbing pipes, whatever. It was a can.
Oh, okay.
And a talking can. That's rather new. But we thought we did a really nice job. So I'd gone there, been in a meeting. We talked about what they would like. He came back, and at that time, Leo Burnett had their producers were on the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
The agency was in Chicago.
Right.
So we did the pencil test. They loved it, the agency.
Right.
We finished the job, and I had a call from the art director, and he said, "Bob, I can't work with you anymore." And I said, "Why?" He says, "You're on the blacklist." I said, "I'm on the blacklist."
Wow.
How do they get there? So I called up the Leo Burnett producer on the West Coast, and I said, "What happened? I heard I'm on the blacklist." He says, "I have no idea." He said, "I don't know what's going on because I didn't see anything wrong with the spot." And everything went smoothly. So I found out, called up the art director again, and it was a creative director who had not been in the meeting that we originally had.
Oh.
So I called him up, and I introduced myself because he's the one who did it. And I said, we did I don't understand. I hear we're on a blacklist. We did the job on time with no overages. What is the problem? And he said, Bob, there's no problem. There's no blacklist, but I'll see that you're taken off, which we weren't. For 2 years, no one could work with us. And I figured out that they hadn't informed the client how broad the commercial would be. The client it was Liquid Plumber, and the client probably wasn't prepared for it, so they blamed it on the studio.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah,
Jeez.
so that's the start of my relationship with Leo Burnett.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I did other things with them, and every time they were a pain in the ass. So, it was. I had a philosophy. I was out. Well, often, I just want to make the film. I think it's mine, it's not theirs, and I want to move on. And with Leo Burnett, they keep making changes. They pay you,
right?
But instead of it being an 8 or 12-week job, it's 6-month job, and it's a pain. And the changes never make it better,
right?
And we just really did not like working that way because it's always watering down your film. And the commercials that we were doing at the time, we were in competition with Europe. It was a time when commercials were very inventive. And I wasn't really interested in how we've been selling product. I was interested in getting the viewer's attention. Then whatever happened. I never did cigarette commercials. I didn't do anything I didn't, I can't say I didn't check all the products we worked on. But if I knew that product was wrong or bad or whatever, we didn't work on it if I consciously knew it. But, my aim is to entertain in film. And, we did it in film titles. We did it in commercials. We did it in specials. And that's what I'm about.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, I came from the animation, like freelance animator in Chicago, and I worked at a bunch of studios there. I got hired by Leo Burnett for like a little bit. I worked on that Ronald McDonald commercials. Ooh, I worked on one Ronald McDonald commercial, and and I had said, hey, why don't you do the little tag where at the time they had a little box logo of the M, McDonald's.
Oh yeah.
And they wanted the M. I said, hey, why don't we have the M like come to life and go, boo, it scares this other character for this Halloween spot. And they said, oh yeah, we can we'll go out to L.A. and have the animators do it out there. And I said, well, we have animators here in Chicago. I mean, we could just, I know a few that would work. Oh, I don't know. We only do that in L.A. I don't know if we can afford. I don't know. I just don't think And this producer fought me for a while. I said, well, no, these guys are good. Okay, look, if that's what. Okay, fine. If that's what you want, then, it's on your head, okay? Don't come crawling to me if it doesn't work. And the studio did a great job, and it was Calabash Productions back.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
yes.
it was like their first.
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember that.
So I got them a job doing that, and then they started getting all the, all the commercials with the Trix Rabbit and all those. Was it Lucky Charms and things like that?
Yeah, it is like the Trix Rabbit. I think I did one because it was very different. But like the Trix Rabbit it's a really fun character, but we would normally have never done that because it's again, they're like so many breakfast foods. Even if the character's good, that isn't what we did. Do because we as I said earlier. If people started doing if a production company that did Trix Rabbit, and then would bring it, and this happened often where someone say they're working with somebody and they don't know if they're getting a good enough job, and then they come to us and they'd say, will you bid? And the company will be the company like Duck Soup that originated the product character and the animation approach. And I would say to him, do you want to change? He said, no, we just want to do the same thing. We want to know if we can get it cheaper. And I would just go, no.
Oh, right. Yeah, they're trying to bid you, see what you would bid, and then
I competitively bid and take away and do somebody else's work at a discount.
Yeah.
And if you're an artist, that shouldn't be what you're about.
Right.
I can do it cheaper. Is not a
Yeah. Right.
There's a sign for you. No.
Yeah.
I'm very competitive, but we didn't get our work because we were the cheapest bid. And I know that. And it's not that I don't want to believe that. I know that. I know when people want to work with you.
Right. So what? Let me ask you. What now? Are you still like animating away, or are you working?
What do you mean, like? Yes.
Okay, that's a California thing. Every time my daughter says "like" in every sentence, because she's well.
Oh no. I meant no. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that. I mean it's. Are you like working?
Oh, okay.
No, just no. I'm working and I like it. Is different.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yeah. So what are you working?
We have projects. There's a couple book projects. Hopefully, I'm working on a project that we hope we can announce soon with Lily Tomlin. I'm doing a public service spot against the NRA. There's stuff where it looks like we're going to be doing more stuff for power companies. So no, we're active.
Oh, that's great.
We're still making film.
Yeah. The one thing I was gonna I lost my train of thought, but it's when I was in Chicago, I actually made a public service announcement, like animation, just because I was bored and had all this time and I was at Leo Burnett, and I actually made this little 30-second film that has Atlas carrying the Earth, and it's real heavy, and he slams it down, he opens up the Earth, and he starts pulling out all the recyclable like bags of and he puts it into the right recycle places like glass and plastic and things like that, and then he goes back to the Earth, he closes it up like a suitcase, and he picks it up and he spins it on his finger like a real light basketball, and he walks off, and it says like recycle there was like a tagline there, but yeah, so I did that, and I did it on recycled paper, because I thought, hey,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah,
That's
I thought, why not? And this was back in the '80s when they didn't really they just started like recycle, programs and things like that. But yeah, so I wanted to do that, and so I filmed it on a friend of mine's. He got an old Oxberry, and we set it up, and I did everything.
You know that most people don't know what an Oxberry
Right,
is.
an Oxberry animation stand back in the day, and yeah, I used a 35 millimeter and shot it, and I put it on YouTube. It's still on there, and
Oh, good for you.
yeah, some place found it and said, "Oh, could we take this and put it in our symposium? Like in New York or something, just for this global kind of recycling day thing." I'm like, "Yeah, sure," and they did, and it got like I don't know, 1 million views, or well, not that many, but at least 1,000 views or more. And it's still getting more views than anything else. But I had fun doing it, and it was kind of in your style where it started off just I didn't really cut that much with that. I zoomed out, and when he goes over to the cans and he puts the stuff in and things like that, I'll send it to you.
Okay,
take a look
I'd
at.
love to see it.
Yeah, yeah. So, so you're working on lots of stuff, and
Yeah.
do you have any advice for like the new generation of animators or artists, or got any?
Okay. Well, let me. I've taught off and on.
Right.
So in doing it, Cal Arts, and I show films at SC, UCLA. I also teach a comedy staging classes at DreamWorks and Disney Feature. And among what I see, what's happening to the students over a period of time is they're coming into the workplace and they're missing stuff. Just the other day, Eric Goldberg, great animator, and I were talking about, because he's doing some teaching too, and he said, the thing is, the curiosity for how things got here seems to be missing. Well, actually, I'll paraphrase. That's sort of his.
Yeah.
I'll build on it. What happens is that students know they have in sense of art and film, they know about 3 years. They may know what took place in their lifetime. They don't know anything before it.
Uh-huh.
And what happens is you're missing out a lot to see, I'll call it the parade of art, the parade of life, that to fill yourself with more things. When I teach, I tell my students, get away from American animation, just because they're all of you are looking at the same thing. And in some ways, you're trying to redo what you see. I think you need to have many more experiences. Get familiar with European film, with Asian film, not just anime.
Right.
But get a huge scope, because a goal as a teacher is, at least for me, is to get my student to a place sooner than he would do if I wasn't teaching him. That's my goal. The other is what I always try to do, like when I teach a storyboard class, at the end of the class, I don't know who did what, because they're evolving, I'm saying it right, and they're changing. In other words, inside every person, and particularly an artist, if they go deep inside themselves, they keep bringing up, get all those drawings out, experience life, go to theater, go to the dance, travel, talk to people, get different viewpoints. Don't see everything in black and white. There's a big problem with the students in that they're looking at each other, and they think the world is their classroom, and it's not. The world is the world.
Yeah.
And you got to open them up so they can find out who they are. If the more you experience, the more you find out about yourself. And that's the same about the history. So we had, I remember I was teaching a class at CalArts on film production, and including one of my students won the Academy Award that year. And I bring in books, and some are esoteric. You know, there are things that people might not know about, like Covarrubias, but you can't know every artist. And I love books, so I get books on everything, and mainly visual. And I'm constantly filling myself up. And I brought in one of the books by Saul Steinberg. Now, none of my students, and they're fourth-year students at CalArts, had ever seen Saul Steinberg.
Okay, he's the guy that.
Went,
Doesn't his style just very? I don't know. How do you describe it? I know who you're talking about.
It's very unique.
Yeah.
A very unique style. One of the important artists of the 20th century, and they liked it, but they were every one of them was unaware of it. I was talking to Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, and he goes, "What?" It's because, there's always someone who will introduce you to some artists, but there's some that are amazing, amazing giants. What's missing in our education that you don't even know the name of somebody? Obviously, we're not living in the 20th century. It's the 21st century, and there's a lot going on. But there's more than that. There's a lot missing in terms of more and more students are coming out not being able to draw.
Yeah.
Because you're working with computers, and you let the computer. Well, what happens with a computer? A computer's a tool.
Exactly.
But a pencil doesn't tell you what to do. A computer does. You have to go within the guidelines of working a computer. And if you notice often, not always, but often, stuff that comes out of a computer is very similar to other people that comes out of a computer. There's a look, a style, a thing that people, stuff looks alike because it's a machine, and the machine is easy to work it that way. When you use a pencil, you'll be surprised how different everybody's drawing will be because it's controlled or lack of control or whatever you do.
Right.
And I personally like handmade films. That originally was going to be Kurtz and Friends was going to be handmade films. But I like films that look like they were made by human beings, not by huge committees,
right?
But by a group, one or a group of artists coming together. And that's the joy of animation, is that when people come together for a common goal and with their skills, and they join together, all these wonderful misfits, and we all go together and we make a film and we contribute to this, but something that didn't exist before. And if so, we've answered, we've solved the problem, and we've done it in an exciting way, and maybe a way that's never been done before. And it's just great working with people. Very few of us are one man. We don't make one man films.
Right.
We get help. Frederick Bach, the wonderful Canadian filmmaker and a good friend, is a rarity. But the rest of us work with other people, and it's a joy. But as far as students, the thing is, have a passion for what you do. Definitely have a passion, because passion will overcome almost anything. And work at it, and experience it, and open up your horizons. That's it.
Yeah.
But there are some who are coming through, but it's people are telling me in the studios, when people come through, what is a glaring lack of, that is occurring. There's a animator who teaches people to use computers.
Oh.
And he told me, Bob, I can take anyone off the street and make them computer savvy in 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
I cannot take anybody to be an animator, and I don't know how long.
Right.
It's a different thing.
Yeah. Well, that's I see it when I teach too. It's like a lot of the students, they don't know like just basic, old films, and I always try to, let them know, just because it's black and white, it doesn't mean it's not good. You should definitely check it out, like, Buster Keaton or, like Chaplin, like just perfect for performance because it's all silent,
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah, I mean, the students can't know everything,
yeah,
but it's got to save you some time and make you aware of comedy staging. How to stage silent films of Keaton and Chaplin are amazing. If you really study what they're doing, because you need to have the visuals tell you the story without the dialogue.
right.
Like I don't do it, but like Chuck Jones used to tell me that when they were doing the shorts, he liked to turn off the sound and see if he still understood what was going on.
Right. Yeah, that's what they do with Pixar too. When they get reels in to students' work, they turn the sound off and just watch the performance.
Yeah, it gives you a different viewpoint. You can see, okay, is the story being told well enough? I mean, it's a reminder.
Right.
I don't tend to work that way, but I'm very much aware of that.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, gosh, we've been talking for about an hour here, so
I think I've been talking.
yeah, that's true.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I'd rather that than, yes, no, maybe, I don't know. So, no, I really appreciate you coming on, and, it's good to talk to you finally and find out, what you're up to and all that. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I was just going to thank you for the opportunity. Again, I think it's important to get different people's artist viewpoints and out there.
Yeah.
If I could say one thing is the school I went to, Chenard. What was great about it is teachers were from the far spectrum. So, one teacher would tell you do this, and the other one would tell you, the other teacher said that don't listen to him. This is what you do. And so the students used to argue of these different viewpoints to find, let's say it's far left, far right, not politically, but just in art, approachment of art. And students found their way, and we used to argue art all the time. And these teachers were not the same. I mean, eventually you had certain teachers that taught the same principles. That's T.E., Mark Davis, and Don Graham. But you had other people, and it was at a very exciting time. And if I could, when I teach, I try to get the student open to challenge, even challenge what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. That's important.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I still would like to come by your studio one day, or
you're welcome.
Or at least take you to Porto's. I don't know. Do you like Porto's? I know I've seen you come out of there. So yeah, I wasn't stalking you. I swear. It just every time I'd walk by, it's like, there he is. Oh.
Oh, really? Yeah, no. Porto's is a great Cuban food.
Oh yeah.
No, that's great. No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I'll let you know when this is finally on the air. It comes on odd times. I believe it comes on every well, it'll premiere to next Tuesday at 4 p.m. or at I think 10 p.m. if we're still doing that time frame or whatever. And yeah, and then it plays for a week, and then the next week we have another episode, which it comes out usually on Tuesdays. So
Okay, I would look forward.
yeah, I'll send you an email about it and all that.
Okay, I'm sorry I've been so hard to get. But,
Oh, no problem. Yeah,
But yeah,
it was
you
worth
did
it.
You got me. So.
Yay! Now I have to
and
stalk
thank
other
you.
people. No.
Okay,
So,
no.
yeah.
Okay, good luck to you and all your projects. Okay.
Okay, and I'll see you later. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll see you, Bob.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Well, that was Bob Kurtz, animation director at Kurtz and Friends in Burbank, California, and yeah, I want to appreciate I am. Hey, so yeah, thanks for listening, and hope you enjoyed that. Again, this is from the Ambassador Good Time Ear Tango Radio Hour, and we're just gonna take this interview and put it on my other web channel called Animateducated. And if you're not a subscriber of that, you should be. You might want to go and subscribe to this. But the edited version of this will be played on Tuesday, February 5th, starting at 4 o'clock and at 10 o'clock at night on Woo Radio. If you go to Woodbury University EDU, type in Woo Radio and then scroll down, you'll see this. You'll see this logo at 4 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and just click on it and then listen, and you'll probably hear this episode. So, I want to let you know that what is it? So you're listening to us live, maybe 3. Listen, so next week you'll hear this, but I'm also going to try this again, and Kathy Zielinski is going to be on the air here, I think. I'm not sure. Can anyone hear everybody for listening today? And I hope you enjoyed that. And I'm really glad that Bob Kurtz came in and, well, on the phone, and glad he came. Glad he called us on the phone, and we talked to him a lot. And I hope you enjoyed that. February 19th, and I'm going to try to have it live like this. So spread the word, everybody. Gary K. Wolf. Who's Gary K. Wolf? He's the guy that created, and he's the writer of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or in his book was called Who Censored Roger Rabbit. And we'll hear all about that. It'll be a great interview. Can't wait to hear this one. Also, it'll be our first interview where it'll be about 8 o'clock in the morning. Because he wants to do it Boston time at like 11 o'clock. So I have to get up early. Poor thing. And anyway, I'll sign off today. I'll sign off right now. I want to thank you all for listening to this live thing we got here. And if I can figure out how to turn it off, I'll do it. Let's see. Oh, God, I don't know. I don't know if I do. All right. Where do I turn it off? I don't know. Oh, there it is. There it is. Wait, is that it? Yes, stop recording. Okay. All right. So I want to say to you, that's right, you. Yeah, you. No, stop moving. Stop moving. I want to say thanks again for tuning in here and listening to this interview. I hope you had a great time, and come back next week. And we're going to try to set this up every week. Hopefully we'll get more people in here. And this was a good first run. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Ambassador Good Time Ear Tango Radio Hour, or also known as the Animateducated. Animateducated. That's all I can say. Okay. So anyway, thank you again, and appreciate you listening. And maybe next time you guys can learn to use the chat How you doing? So anyway, okay. Thanks again, and tune in next week, or check the animatededucated.blogspot.com. You can see this article that I put up about Mr. Kurtz right here. There he is. And you can also become a follower, because I only have 21 of them. So be 22. So if you like this, do that for me. I appreciate all your help. Thank you so much. And I will see you next time in this internetses. Okay. All right. I'm getting crazy. All right. I'll talk to you later. Thank you very much. And good night or goodbye. Okay. Bye. Did I stop it? Oh, I stopped it. Nope. Stopped it.